Tonight on TLC, their popular reality show 90 Day Fiance, Happily Ever After? Airs with an all-new Sunday, July 18, 2021 episode, and we have your 90 Day Fiance. Happily Ever After? Recap below for you. On tonight's 90 Day Fiance, Happily Ever After Season 7 Episode 18, Man Up or Shut Up, as per the TLC synopsis, Michael reaches out to Angela after the breakup. Tensions run high for Natalie's surgery. Andre's introduction to Elizabeth's family goes awry. Ronald tries to prove that he's a good father. Brandon and Julia have a surprise. Jovi finally comes home. So make sure to tune in tonight between 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. ET for our 90 Day Fiancé, Happily Ever After recap. While you wait for our recap, make sure to check out all our television spoilers, news, recaps, and more, here. Tonight's 90 Day Fiancé, Happily Ever After? Recap begins now. Refresh page often to get the most current updates. It's the day of Natalie's surgery. She and her husband Mike haven't been talking. They went their separate ways after their latest argument, and he has no idea where she is. Mike is especially frustrated because he took time off from work to be there for his wife during the surgery. They only have one vehicle, and so he has no idea where his wife or where even the car was located. He had to get a ride to the hospital. Mike then waited in the parking lot for Natalie to arrive or return his calls, and nothing happened. He didn't see her. He didn't hear from her. He then went driving around the parking lot to see if he recognized his car, and he eventually did. He found it in the parking lot. He knew his wife was at the hospital already. He also knew she was ignoring his phone calls. Mike had no idea when the surgery was. Natalie needed surgery to help her breathe, and so she could have been in surgery already as he was trying to call her, but Mike didn't know and he was upset. He used his car key to start the car and he left. Mike didn't tell her he was leaving. He just left with the car and basically abandoned her at the hospital. Mike and Natalie's marriage is on the verge of collapse. Only it had less swearing than Andrea and Elizabeth's marriage. Elizabeth booked an Airbnb and she asked the homeowner if there was enough space for the RV, and he said yes. The owner lied. There was no parking space for a huge RV, and the rented house was located on a one-way narrow street. They couldn't go there. Andre's brother-in-law backed him up because he could see the street and he knew that Andre was doing his best, and so they had to give up their house and they instead went to a hotel. A hotel with a parking lot. They were able to park the RV and they could get off the bus. It just had a lot of swearing before it could be done. Andre swears like a sailor. He was upset and he didn't know how to voice that properly. He just got mad. It also didn't help that his sister-in-law Jen wanted to blame the situation on him. It wasn't his fault. He wasn't the one who booked the house. He was just the driver. He couldn't force the RV onto a narrow street because then they would get sued for property damage. Then there was Yara. Yara has been more accepting of help since she had to move in with her mother-in-law once she came down with COVID-19, and now she's regained some independence. She lives on her own again. She also was finally getting back her husband. Jovi was returning from his work trip. He left when his daughter was a newborn and he's coming back now that she's 4 months old. Yara was genuinely scared Mila wouldn't recognize her father. They've seen him while FaceTiming, only it wasn't the same. Mila went to the airport with the baby and her in-laws and they all greeted Jovi when he arrived. And Jovi was happy to see them. He couldn't wait to go home and spend time with them. Jovi also wanted to see the new place. His wife Yara found the house on her own and she's been keeping a secret from him. He hasn't seen the place in the videos. He doesn't know what it looks like or if they were going to need a new place before long. So, he was excited to see it for himself. Jovi and Yara's reunion was sweet and free of anxiety. Ronald and Tiffany's reunion was stressful. Tiffany was using the trip to judge whether or not her marriage to Ronald is a good idea, and so far he's been letting her down and showing her that maybe they're better off apart. Ronald blows his money on things that don't count. He then expects Tiffany to use her money because he ran out of his money and he used dirty tricks. Ronald wanted Tiffany and their kids to stay in South Africa with him. He spoke with Tiffany about it and she said it wasn't a good idea, and so he went around her. Talked about it with their son Daniel. Ronald hyped what the holidays would look like in South Africa. He made Daniel get excited and then Daniel started talking about staying until the holidays. Tiffany couldn't say a word against it because then she would like the person against Christmas. Tiffany was forced to go along with it and she tried to give Ronald a budget. He was a gambler with a lot of debt. He shouldn't be blowing all of his money on Christmas decorations, and yet that's exactly what he did. He went for the biggest and grandest tree because he wanted to be the good guy. And for Tiffany, to be the Grinch. Asuelu and Kalani are still running on a high since their getaway. Their relationship is at its best and it's better than it's ever been, except the time has come for Asuelu to return to work. He took time off after he got into that nasty car accident. He's now returning to work, and that's great because Asuelu wants to move out from their in-laws' house. He also wants a car for him to use. Asuelu does rideshare and he needs a car after the last one was totaled. Asuelu wants to get a minivan. He wants a car big enough for the large family he hopes to have, and he has two already. He wants more. He didn't talk about it with his wife first. Kalani found out he wanted 7 kids when they were at the car dealership, and she was rightfully upset. Kalani doesn't want a big family. They both came from big families and that meant they were poor growing up. Kalani doesn't want that for them. She wants them to be better off. She also would like a house first before they even think about another baby, and so she was against the minivan. She told him to get a vehicle that would use less gas. Kalani and Asuelu were discussing at the car dealership as Brandon and Julia were showing his parents his new place. They didn't tell his parents they signed a lease. They instead just showed them around as if they were considering it, and Brandon's parents were not enthused. They didn't like the views. They didn't like how small it was. They also didn't think Brandon would go as far as to find a place. The parents thought Brandon was just lashing out. They didn't think he could find a place without him, and then they got angry that he found a place without them. They own several properties. They thought Brandon would need their vast experience, and he didn't. He did something with just his wife. His parents hadn't liked that, and they accused Julia of manipulating Brandon. They thought it was her that made him get the place. They also thought it was her that hated living on the farm. Julia does hate living on the farm. She was a city girl, and it was amazing she lasted a full year on the farm as it is. Only she wasn't manipulating her husband. She told him what she wants and he agreed with her because, as it turns out, a grown man can have opinions. Brandon was tired of being considered a child by his parents. He wanted to show them he could do things on his own, and so far they still seem to be doubting him. Then there was Angela. Angela and her husband Michael have had a huge fight and they broke up. Angela said it was over. Michael even agreed with her, and now it appears he's changed his mind. He's been reaching out to Angela. She wasn't responding, and so he started contacting her daughter to see if she could get Angela to return her calls. Skyla told her mother about it. She also told Angela to tell Michael what she has to say because she didn't want to pass on any messages to either of them, and so Angela called Michael. She called him, and the first thing he did was bring up their argument. Michael wasn't sorry. He didn't apologize for what he said or for not being supportive enough after her surgery, and so Angela was done with him. She yelled, "I'm American," as well as other things along the lines of, "I don't have to do what you say." She also got angry again at him for not apologizing. Angela still said they were broken up, and she hung up on him before he could say much else. Tiffany meanwhile was so concerned about Ronald's spending that she spoke with his mother. The couple visited Ronald's mother with the children so that she could see them, and, while they were there, Tiffany couldn't help mentioning her concerns. She was particularly upset that she's been begging Ronald for help with the kids and he didn't lift a finger to help her until they were going to see his mom. It was things like that made Tiffany feel like they wouldn't work. She said as much to her mother-in-law, and her mother-in-law implied that her expectations might have been too high when she first came. Which is true. Tiffany wanted Ronald to be at his best, and he was instead very human. He made mistakes. He made several of them, and his spending does seem to be out of control. Maybe it's part of his addiction. Maybe it's not, and she's reading too much into it. Her mother-in-law seems to think so, and so that made Tiffany genuinely reflect on everything Ronald had done. She was still considering it as Asuelu was talking to his mom. He was FaceTiming her. He showed off her grandchildren to her, and Kalani stopped by to say hi. Kalani also grabbed her kids. She hasn't quite forgiven her mother-in-law for everything that happened and for the way the older woman kept demanding money, and so she wanted her children as far away from the woman as humanly possible. She grabbed her kids and she left. Asuelu caught up with his mom. He told her about how he wants a big family, and she understood because he grew up with 9 siblings. Asuelu wants to recreate that with Kalani. It was Kalani that was against the big family. She doesn't want 9 or even 7 kids. She wants financial stability and to finally stop breastfeeding one day. Kalani told Asuelu that the day he can carry the babies will be the day he can dictate how many they have. Jovi meanwhile saw the new place and he hated it. He hated that it was in the suburbs. He hated that it was so far from the city, and so he explained that in his confessional that his marriage has already changed so much for him. He got married, had a baby, and moved to the suburbs all within the first year of marriage. Jovi even has a bedtime now. He's not sure how he'll handle it because he was once the party boy and so this is going to be new for him. Only things got worse between Andre and his in-laws. He met Elizabeth Sant and it was going to be a new start when Charlie chose to tell everyone about how two-faced Andre is. Charlie is still raw that Andre has been brought into the family business and so he passed that on to everyone else. They all began questioning Andre's motives in working with Chuck. Charlie was very pleased with himself and he started a fight with Andre and then tried to escalate things when Andre responded. And yet everyone told Andre to calm down as if it was his fault that Charlie went there. Ronald and Tiffany had a date night without the kids and it all went to hell when Tiffany revealed to Ronald's mom about him.